Hello, everybody. This is Standard Def, the retro and nostalgia podcast here on the Boss Rush Network, where each and every, opportunity that we have, Monday, we come together with our friends from around the internet to talk about games, movies, and shows, and other topics that make us nostalgic. I am Stephanie, your host for the classic animated Disney branch of Standard Definition. And we all know that we can't have a nostalgia podcast without recording episodes covering these classic Disney hand-drawn series. These Disney movies that we'll be reviewing will be in release order, starting from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs all the way to The Princess and the Frog that was released in 2009. Here, I am joined with my amazing co-host, Corey Dirrig.
Hello, I'm here. I'm feeling magical this evening.
And the magical Mark Pererra.
Hello.
Mark is magical, isn't he?
He is. He is like the unicorn.
Guys.
Look at him.
You guys.
Look at him. He's so magical.
You're making my head blush.
Aww.
Speaking of making us blush, do you know how you would like to support us? Well, you could support us and get the show 2 weeks early by heading over to our Patreon, patreon.com/Boss Rush Network, or subscribe on free feeds. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd greatly appreciate it if you leave us a 5-star review because it does help with discoverability. You can also catch all of our content on the YouTube channel and bossrush.net. Also, the merch store is open, and we have a variety of designs, including our own Disney version of a Standard Def shirt, or any type of clothing item or sticker that you want. But before we officially dive in, Corey, do you have some VIPs that you'd like to list off?
I do. So, prerequisite. This episode's going up a little bit later than anticipated, but we're recording in April, so I want to make that clear, and I want to let people.
I see how it is.
I just want to let people know that, look, this was the show I was really worried about being ahead on because it doesn't have a set day to record every week like all the other shows, and this is the only show we're ahead on by like 6 or 7 episodes, I think. So
we're steamrolling through this.
We are. So this is we're recording in April. These are our current patrons at the producer tier. You can check out our other podcasts that record on time, I guess, to find recent producers. But I want to get these out there. I want to make sure everybody's, what do you say? Represented.
Acknowledged.
Acknowledged. Thank you. That's a good word. Thank
you. They
are
frozen in time.
Yeah. Happy April, everybody. It snowed today. It really did. It snowed here today. So remember, you can get early access at $1. You can get all of our shows early. But if you are a $5 patron, you are subscribing to the producer tier, which means you get your name shouted out on this here podcast, this here fine program, as we like to say.
Of quality content.
Quality content. So, our producers are Quentin Jackson, new producer. Thank you very much. I think last week, as of this recording. So thank you, Quentin Jackson, Rebecca Jewell, Adriel Munger, and my wife, Sana Dirrig.
The real rock star.
Yes. She's in the other room right now, by the way, watching something. I don't know.
90 Day Fiancé,
Probably,
maybe?
Most likely. Either that or one of the 9,000 spin-offs that there are.
All right, great. I just watched 90 Day Fiancé before this. Now I'm going to... Speaking of quality content, right?
It's questionable content, as Ed would say.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you. But we are going to talk about real quality content because this is the Disney edition of Standard Definition, and we are covering Cinderella.
Cinderella.
And I don't know about you guys, and I want to start off with this because I'm not discounting Snow White or Pinocchio or the other Disney movies that we've talked about so far, but I just feel like there was a tonal shift when I watched Cinderella. Like I'm not sure if it's maybe the more present humor that's in there or something, and maybe we can dive into this later, but I just kind of felt a little bit of a different style, or just, again, shift in tone once I watched Cinderella.
Yeah, there's definitely a more of a comedic element to this, like a more like real, like, oh, kind of like what you see in traditional Disney movies. And like for a long time, I thought this was like a more modern Disney movie. Like I thought this was like made in like the late 70s, early 80s. Like in my mind growing up, this was a modern Disney movie. I didn't realize this came out when it did, because, you know, you have all the traditional like kind of 90s, early 2000s Disney, you know, tropes, like the comedic animal pals, right? And the, you know, the animation style, the quirky kind of villain henchman and you know, Lucifer, and like the evil stepsisters, and the, you know, it's just like this has all of the makings of what modern Disney movies are made of. And so like probably until 10 years ago at least, and I'm a big Disney fan, and I just assumed this was a modern Disney movie. Like I was like, oh yeah, it probably came out like right before Oliver and Company and Little Mermaid. That's where I kind of had it sitting in my mind, you know.
Yeah, I feel like I feel the same way as you. I feel like I'm approaching it from a different angle, in that I had always thought, because I knew that Cinderella came out like early in Disney history, and so I assumed that Cinderella was kind of in those kind of sleepy kind of Disney phase. And what I mean by that is like a Sleeping Beauty or a Pinocchio or a what's some other ones that would be? Dumbo, yeah, just like not quite, like Disney's still trying to figure things out, right? And this felt like classic, quintessential, like this felt like a Disney 90s Renaissance film. Like I was so blown. I always wrote off Cinderella because I just thought it was just another, not that those films aren't great, like Snow White's not that that's not a great film, but it's just like a little bit of a product of its time. And this is like the first true like real Disney movie for me.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a movie that they had it all figured out, which, by the way, it just hit me, like literally as I was saying, like I felt like this was like a more modern Disney movie. And, you know, Stephanie, we were talking about Disney World before we started recording. Disney World is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Like 1971 park opened, and it has Cinderella's castle in it, so I should have known it came out before then, right? But like it just dawned on me that I'm like, oh, whoops. Well,
yeah, but even in the 70s, like that's this came out in what,
1950?
59? 50?
1950. So
50?
Like that's 25 years before.
It's insane.
Yeah. So this movie should not be as good as it is, and I have always thought, like, why is it Cinderella's castle that's in the logo? Why is it Cinderella's castle at Disney World? Why is Cinderella such a big deal? And it's like this movie is fantastic.
Yeah,
it's just like a real Disney movie.
And
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love how like I love Jacques and Gus. Like they're the best side characters in a lot of these classic movies, right? Like they're funny, like the way they talk to each other, the way Gus like picks up the corn off the ground and like tries to waddle over to the hole and he drops them all, right? Like I love them, but I also like Cinderella feels like a more modern princess in a way, where like she has.
I will hit on that for sure later because I have words.
Okay, yeah, we can. I mean, obviously, it's like, oh well.
Cut you off on that. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, no, I like. Yeah, okay. She marries the prince to get away at the end, right? Happily ever after, whatever. But like during the movie, like she has ambition. She wants to be more than what she is doing in the movie, right? And so, you know, it's kind of, again, we kind of talked about this. Which movie did we talk about this in? I think Snow White, I guess, where like, you know, it felt ahead of its time, way ahead of its time, even more than Snow White did, you know, and it was kind of nice to see, you know.
Oh, yeah. Well, just because you mentioned Snow White real quick, because Snow White, she did sing about meeting a prince or something, which inherently that's not a bad thing. We all want to meet our someone that we want to care or love about. But when you go to Cinderella's song, she just talks about dreams. She's not necessarily pining for a prince or a guy. But again, I know I'm gonna get into a long tirade about it later, but I want to start with, what is Cinderella? I like doing a little ad-lib one-liners if we were all to just give a sentence or two summary of what the plot is, and then I'll follow up with maybe an IMDb summary or something. So I'll just go and I'll keep it nice and simple. Cinderella, she just wants to go have fun at a party. Just let her have fun at the party. Who wants to go next?
Cinderella wants to look fancy and have some cool shoes.
Cinderella wants more than what she's got.
There you go. All right. But really, what is Cinderella? This is Disney's 12th animated feature about a young girl named Cinderella who's treated like a servant by her stepmother and stepsisters. When they prevent her from attending a royal ball, she gets some unexpected help from her animal friends and the fairy godmother. Cinderella was released in February 15th of 1950. Did you know, and I was so excited because I'm from outside of Boston, Cinderella was originally released in theaters in Boston in February 15th and then March 4th for the rest of the United States. Because I don't know why, but cool. Runtime, it's a little bit over than the really short movies in the past but it ran 74 minutes. Its budget was about $2.2 million, and collectively box office is $182 million, and that's based off of November of 2021 data. So who knows if they made more? I don't know. But let's take a look at the origin, because I feel like at least everyone has base knowledge that, this movie, this is not the first time the story of Cinderella has been told, right? Many people refer to the Brothers Grimm adaptation. But what I learned about is the first recorded story ever featuring a Cinderella-like figure dates back to Greece in the 6th century. Oh, Mark, what's up? And you're on mute. Oh, no!
Mark is gone.
Sorry. I'll be right back. 1 sec.
Oh, sorry. I totally misinterpreted that.
It's okay.
Broke the show.
Sorry, I broke the show.
Go.
Mark broke the show. It's broken.
But anyway, in Greece, 6th century BC, in that story, so in ancient Greece, a Greek courtesan named Rhodopis had one of her shoes stolen by an eagle who flies it all the way across the Mediterranean and drops it into the lap of an Egyptian king. And in typical storytelling fashion, the king takes this fallen shoe drop as a sign from the heavens, literally and metaphorically, and the king goes on this quest to find the owner of the shoe. And when he finds Rhodopis, he marries her, lifting her from her lowly status to the throne. And there have been several other cultural variations from China, Italy, and France. Did you know that, Corey?
I did not know that whatsoever. I didn't know that. So that's a lot of that's a
right?
Wow.
I mean the Grimm one, it's called Ashen Puddle, with not really the most attractive name. And as you know, Grimm brothers had a bit of a dark side. They said for the Grimm's version of Cinderella, her wishes still do come true, but it came from a tree that I think grew over her mother's grave instead of a fairy godmother. I think in this case, the father is alive. He's just ignorant to her suffering. Shoes were made out of gold, not out of glass, though I think glass is cooler. I shouldn't be laughing, but in the scene where the stepsisters try to fit into the shoe in the movie, in the Grimm story, one of the stepsisters actually cuts off her toes to try to fit in the shoe. Oh. And Cinderella does have a happily ever after in the Grimm story, but the stepsisters do not. Their eyes get picked out by doves during the wedding ceremony. So I'm glad Disney ran in a different direction, but I think it's important to kind of know where these things came from.
I could have done without the visuals, but
Imagine these guys coming up with this story, be like, you know what?
Yeah, who are these people? Why are they so violent?
I know.
God. And why did Disney think that those stories were good ideas to make into movies?
Right. The ones that he gravitated towards are all like really horrific.
Oh yeah, wait till we get to Little Mermaid. That
Little
story
Mermaid?
was...
Yeah.
Oh God.
But anyway, Disney's Cinderella was deemed a critical success. It was especially noted with what we touched upon, humor and music geared to the appeal of both young and old audiences, which I think is why we see the bigger appeal, because weren't like the older movies technically more adult focused, right?
Mm-hmm.
In 1951, the film received 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Sound, Scoring of a Musical Picture, and Best Music Original Song. And then in June 2008, the American Film Institute acknowledged Cinderella as the 9th greatest film in the animation genre, which I found mind-blowing. There were 2 direct-to-video sequels released in 2002 and 2007 that I have not watched and will refuse to watch.
They are not good, let me tell you. My daughter...
Have you watched them recently?
Yes.
When?
Probably a couple months ago, because my daughter went through a Cinderella phase.
So I watched them for this podcast. The second one is terrible. It's terrible. It's
really
like
bad.
Basically, it's like they were gonna make a Cinderella TV show, and it got canceled, and so they took the first 3 episodes. This is not what happened, but it's like they took the first 3 episodes and mashed it into one.
Can you give me like a high level premise of what Cinderella 2 and 3 are about?
So Cinderella 2, they're married. It takes place after the first Cinderella, and the mice are working on a present for Cinderella with the fairy godmother, and it's a book that's telling stories of Cinderella's first year as a princess. And so it's 3 like 30-minute little vignettes, little stories that don't really have anything to do with each other, but are kind of woven into this one story. It's not good at all. But the third one, Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time, is actually pretty good. The production quality is much better than the second one. The voice acting is much better than the second one. For some reason, Cinderella becomes a brunette in this one. I don't know why. But in this
Switch
one...
it up, you know?
Right.
Summertime.
The stepmother gets a hold of the fairy godmother's wand, and she uses it to make it so that the prince doesn't remember that he met Cinderella. He remembers that he met one of the stepsisters. And so it's like Cinderella trying to get back to the prince. And so it's like definitely like a direct-to-video animated sequel. But in terms of sequel, I mean, it really wasn't that bad.
All things considering.
Yeah.
Interesting. But
the third one completely contradicts everything that happens in the second one. So like the second one like doesn't matter at all.
I mean, I think that was the Michael Eisner after what's his face died, where like he was just trying to make money, and every movie under the sun got a directed DVD sequel or a TV show on the Disney Channel, right? Like I remember Emperor's New Groove got a TV show, Hercules got a TV show. Yeah. Aladdin got a TV show. Lion King got like 3 TV shows, right? I mean, like these were like this was a time. Bambi got a sequel, you know.
Yeah.
So,
but you know what? Probably was good. I mean, hopefully people thought of this, but the live adaptation in 2015 featured Lily James, Richard Madden, and Cate Blanchett. Who's seen the live adaptation of Cinderella?
Yeah, I watched it I'd seen it when it came out, but I watched it for this too. And this, in my opinion, is the best live adaptation of Disney films, hands down. I mean, hands down. It takes the source material, which is really pretty light if you like break down the major plot points of the film. It takes it elaborates on it. It isn't afraid to be kind of a little bit cheesy and whimsical, but like is a little bit more rooted in realism. I mean, mice still turn into horses and stuff. So, but it is so good. It is like the best out of all of the recent live action adaptations. I absolutely love the live action version of Cinderella.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. It has my vote as the best live adaptation thus far.
Yeah, I've only seen it once, but I remember really liking it. And like a lot of the stuff that came after it, like the live action stuff, was really bad. Like Beauty and the Beast is terrible. I don't know who likes that movie, but it was terrible.
A lot of my friends loved it, but I'm like, I don't know.
I like looking at it from just like an animation standpoint. Like when the beat, like not. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to it when we talk about Beauty and the Beast, so I won't get too far into it. But like the scene where the Beast is fighting Gaston on the roof of the castle, like if you watch the animation, there are no shadows under the Beast, and it like really doesn't look good, like at all. And it just really bothers me. That movie really bothers me.
The problem with the Disney live action adaptations, or the ones that are bad, are they try to be too much like the animated version. They try to just be a live action version of what came before, and when you do that, then it's really difficult. It's difficult to divorce the two, and so you compare it to the original. And the ones that take it as a framework and deviate from the story that it told and try to do its own thing, those are the ones that are more successful. I really like the live version of Aladdin.
So did I.
Because I feel like it took what worked well in Aladdin and applied it to this kind of, it's the same story, but this new version of the story that they were trying to tell. The live action Lion King was terrible, in my opinion, and it lifted. I mean, Mufasa was the same voice in both versions. It lifted the same exact dialogue, so you could literally play the two side by side and compare and say the animated version is so much better than the live action one. And so Cinderella was really the first one in this new wave of live action remakes, and it took what worked well and honored the spirit of the film and kind of made its own thing. And so there wasn't any singing. The mice didn't talk, but like a lot of the spirit of the film was carried over, and it's really well done.
Nailed it right on the head. All right, before we talk about characters, I like doing my little trivia question. Mickey Mouse made a cameo in Cinderella of sorts. In what scene did he make this appearance? A, where the mice are making Cinderella's dress. B, when Cinderella's washing the floors. C, at the ball. Or D, at the wedding / end scene.
I think it's... I don't know. I really don't know. I think it's the wedding scene. But I'm not sure.
I know the answer.
All right, go for it, Mark.
It's when she's cleaning on the floor and the bubbles and the soap make Mickey Mouse's
head
silhouette.
And ears. Yeah. Ding, ding, ding. You are right. I love finding little Easter eggs like that.
Well, I was wrong. I'm a terrible Disney fan.
No.
Terrible.
I'm fired.
Yep.
So if no one's seen it before, just, kind of keep an eye out when she's scrubbing the floors, the bubbles are everywhere, and she's singing, what's that song? Something about a nightingale.
Sing Sweet Nightingale.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, like with a lot of our other standard def shows, we don't necessarily do like a play-by-play of the plot. This movie's been around for a while, but we really enjoy talking about our characters. So I think we should just dive right in. Is there a particular character you want to talk about first, or we can just go with my list?
Unless we're going to talk about the mice first, because they're just my favorite.
Yeah.
I love Jacques and Gus, and it's just, they're so fun. They're so fun. Yeah. And even like their interactions with Lucifer, right? It's just, they're really fun. They're really funny. I like the way that they are like kind of helping Cinderella in solving problems. And, like even towards the end when they're carrying the key up the stairs, right? Like it's just, there's a lot of heart in those characters, and the comedy that comes out of those characters is from the heart that is put into those characters, I think.
Oh, yeah. I love how Jack is like, he's the wise guy, right? So he's like, like, for example, when they're trying to collect the beads and all that extra stuff to, make Cinderella's dress, he's creating a distraction of Lucifer. This whole time he's like stacking buttons, and then he just like flips it and pops Lucifer in the nose. I'm like, I love this dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way. One of my favorite things about this movie is the quality of the voice acting, and what I mean by that, not that it's like excellent, it is, but that kind of old-fashioned tone in everybody's voice and the way that they speak. But I specifically love the way that the mice speak. I was about to say mouses. The way that the mice speak, because there's a lot of times where you can't really understand what they're saying. But I thought it was a really bold choice to continue to do that, because there's so much more in the animation that comes out. You have to really like look at their mannerisms and what they're doing and the context to really understand what they're saying. And it reminds me of more modern films like Encanto or Coco, where characters are speaking Spanish on screen, but there's no subtitles. And so you just have to pick up on context and nuance. And it just really makes you understand the characters better. And so I really love the way specifically they make the mice speak. Because most of the time, if you listen to it, you don't really understand, or it's not till a couple of seconds have passed and you're like, oh, they're saying this. And so I really love that about the mice.
That's a really good point. Yeah. They're just, you can enjoy them by either like listen to their conversations through their body language, and I don't know. And I love their singing, a little high pitched singing.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah,
and the scenes when they focus just on the mice, everything else looks larger in comparison. I really love the environment. That's like when they're bringing the key up the stairs, like that staggering upshot. It's like, oh man, like I would give up.
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah.
Nice. I think all the animals there were great. Like Bruno is the loyal dog, and we've got the horse, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they all have names, right? But I just forgot.
Bruno's the dog.
Bruno, yeah, but the dog.
Forget what
the
horse's name.
Horse.
Horse's name is who? What is the name of Cinderella's horse? Major.
Major. I don't know if that's very explicitly said, but speaking of animals, Lucifer was a good kind of side antagonist, kind of very stereotypical cat. I mean, thankfully my cat's not like that, but one of my favorite gifts has Lucifer in it when Cinderella tries to wake him up and he just like turns around and gives her the butt.
Yeah.
But his name is very fitting, right? He loves to terrorize the mice, and not only that, but he actually gets a lot of joy whenever Cinderella's in trouble.
Yeah.
So he kind of gets what's coming to him at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say that as a cat person.
Yeah, Lucifer kind of sucks. He just, I don't know. It's just the epitome of it's the epitome of what you think a cat that is not going to like you does, right? It's lazy. It meows at you weird. It's swipes at you. Lucifer is just it's basically our cat for me. It just doesn't like me. Just tells me to go away, causing problems.
All right. I want to talk about another side character before we get into the meat and potatoes, because the side character is actually one of my newest favorite characters. One thing I noticed is when I watched Disney movies as a kid, I identify probably with the main protagonist or main antagonist. As I get older, there's a lot of side characters that I tend to relate to more. Or not relate to, I shouldn't say that. Maybe I just enjoy more, and that would be the relationship between the king and the duke. Yeah. The king is freaking hilarious. Yeah. My son keeps repeating his lines because he thinks he's the funniest guy in the world. It's like your typical old-fashioned parent that wants to shove down their agenda down their kid's throat. Even the prince himself, he's not even trying to be the typical prince where I need to go marry or rescue some fair maiden. He was off doing whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I think the beginning of the story, he was returning from somewhere, and it's the father's like, I want grandbabies before I die. And the duke's like, we just got to take your time, let it happen naturally. But the king has such a crazy crazy temper. And one of my favorite scenes is when Cinderella got away and the Duke had to relay the message, and the king's face got so red, and the Duke's like, "But sir, your blood pressure."
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah,
I've always loved those characters, the King and the Duke specifically, and they're like, I don't know, there's some of the, typically in Disney movies, the animals are the kind of silly characters, but they're like humans that are silly, and they're super fun.
Yeah, I don't know, man. There's just a lot about this movie that like I guess I didn't really appreciate when I was younger because I was too cool to watch Cinderella because I was
a princess movie.
Yeah, but like rewatching it and just kind of appreciating the humor between the King and the Duke or the animals or just even like the animation in general is so well done. Like kind of like what we touched on at the beginning, but like it really felt like Disney was finally hitting on all cylinders with this movie. And it kind of like, it has the great animation of Bambi. It has the great kind of storytelling of, Snow White. It has the humor of Pinocchio. Like it combined all the elements of their previous works and just, they did it. They nailed it, and gosh, even when she's cleaning and like the bubbles are kind of floating, like that's cool. Or like even the effects of her transforming
into that dress, the best scene ever.
Like it's such a good, like the animation of that scene alone. Like if you just pause it and go frame by frame, it is like a gorgeous piece of animation.
Yeah. Like
her body movement, her arms, the magic, or like everything about it is
and like
masterclass animation.
Even everything else, like not just her transforming, but like the pumpkin into the carriage, the animals into the horses, even the horses turn into the carriage driver people, right? Like all of the animation in the transformation scenes is the even compared to today's work, right? Like I think that kind of stuff is why this movie feels so modern.
Right.
And it's 72 years old.
Well, they established the formula that worked for them and then went back to that well time and time again for every single Disney princess movie after that, with the exception of Snow White. Sleeping Beauty. But every good Disney film has dipped into the animal sidekick, the evil, close relation to the main person. The princess wants, or the female wants something more. It has like an I want song. There's like everything is the formula is established in this movie, and then they went back to that formula time and time again, and then went away from it, and then dipped back in when they got back into Frozen and Tangled and Princess and the Frog, which is like they're what they're really good at.
Now you're right. Yeah, formulas is precisely it. And speaking of, we can talk about Cinderella and even the stepmother and stepsisters. One fun fact, because sometimes I kind of wonder about the ages of these princesses. They're usually a lot younger than I would think. But Cinderella is actually one of the older Disney princesses. She's pegged to be around 19 or 20 years old.
Ooh, an older
in the movie.
Princess.
Well, older, right? Where Snow White is supposed to be the youngest at age 14.
What?
Right?
Did we talk about that on that episode?
I don't think so, but I was looking up fun facts and stuff like that.
Gross.
So here is where I kind of double back to what you mentioned in the beginning, Corey, and I'm sorry for you. I apologize in advance to those that love Frozen. I want to throw out a couple disclaimers. Number one, I do not hate Frozen. Frozen is a fine movie. The way I might rant sometimes may sound like I don't like Frozen. It's just that I don't like how people hype up that movie so much as the first very strong female, I don't need a man type.
Have they ever watched any other Disney movie? Did they watch Princess and the Frog, which was like, wasn't that like a year or two before Frozen?
Yeah, but for whatever reason, Frozen received all this praise for like, oh look, they
yeah, but that's like every movie nowadays, right? Though I mean, like Okay, I'm gonna tread in some hot water here, but just hear me out. Okay, okay, like, and I understand that there's like a cultural difference with this movie, but like everybody points at Black Panther for being the first black superhero, right? Did nobody watch Blade?
Right.
Nobody watched Blade. Did nobody watch like, I don't know, the movie that Shaq was in, Steel? Nobody watched Steel. Terrible movie.
But it was
Still
the
counts,
first, yeah.
you know?
No, yeah, it makes sense.
I mean,
and that doesn't make Black Panther any less good. It's just like, hey, you're forgetting about these things that happen.
And I understand that, like, Black Panther, the whole cultural thing, like, the whole thing was, like, a big moment. That I understand, but, like, people pointing and say he's the first black superhero, I'm like, 90s, guys.
Right.
Blade. Wesley Snipes. Cool guy.
The Wesley Snipes.
Yeah, in jail for tax evasion. But
well, but I don't know. So sometimes you'll hear me get a little ranty about Frozen, because when I was preparing myself to watch Cinderella, I'm like, all right, this is just another one of those 50s era princesses. But when I watched it, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't bothering me like I thought it was going to bother me, because again, she wasn't necessarily dreaming about marrying a prince necessarily. She wanted to go to a ball. Like, her goal wasn't, I want to go to the ball to find the prince, to marry the prince. It was more like, oh my goodness, I want to actually go out like my stepsisters can go out. I just want to dress up and have a good time. And even the way the writing is set up is she didn't even realize she was dancing with the prince.
Right.
When the clock tower struck midnight, she goes, I gotta meet the prince. And he's like, but don't you know? And she's like, goodbye, peace. And so that's why, I don't get all so bent out of shape when she marries the prince at the end, because I'm like, okay, so she just happens to meet happily ever after, whatever. I feel like people need to look at these older films, and yes, still a bit outdated, but I feel like Cinderella deserves a bit more credit. She's pretty strong, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my thoughts.
I'm saying these movies were ahead of their time. Obviously, it's not like they're ahead of their time for 2022, but they are ahead of their time for 1950. Let's be honest here.
Yeah, I think what happens is that people put things into a box, and so they think, oh, Disney animated films are all about women only are worth the man that's in their life, and they only want men, and when they are just there to get married, and that's it, and so it gets this people get this impression in their head, and they don't actually interact with the media itself. And so when you really interact with it, yeah, there's some questionable things in some Disney movies. Yeah, in The Little Mermaid, she gives up her voice, but in Sleeping Beauty, she gets kissed while she's asleep. But you have to take each thing for what it's worth. One, and two, it's okay to tell girls that you can feel good feeling pretty and wanting to go out and wanting to go to there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel like a princess. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, it's a bad thing when you say the only thing that you can do is be a princess. But it is okay for girls to want to be a princess and want to feel pursued and loved and cherished, and it is okay for boys to want to pursue and love and cherish a princess, or for princes to want to do that, right?
Preach.
Yes. It's and we've gotten into this situation that we're in where we're trying to be more enlightened, and we're trying to be more modern and whatever, and so it's gender tropes bad, and girls being princesses bad, and boys wanting to pursue girls bad, and it's no, it's not inherently bad. It's just when you tell them that that's the only thing that's bad. And so let's not remove these really great positive. Cinderella has a lot of agency in her life. Yes, she can't. The villain of the piece is a woman who's putting her in her place. So I agree with you 1,000%. I think Cinderella is a a pretty modern woman who knows what she wants and goes for it and is the driver of change in her life and is not just a damsel in distress.
Right. And you know what? There's a speaking when you said she has her own agency, like she has great points of being a good role model. Like when they first got the letter about the ball and the stepsisters were whining like Cinderella can't go, but Cinderella actually speaks her mind. She goes, why can't I go? It says every eligible maiden can attend. So she said she didn't back down at first. And also she's just a great role model all around. She was given a really crappy life. You know, once her father passed away and she got treated like garbage. She didn't like accept it like it's a good thing, but she tried to stay positive and tried to be forward thinking. I'm like, you know, kids need something like this. That she had a lot of like mental fortitude in my opinion.
Yeah, and one of the things I feel like the live action version does really well is it gives motivation and a little bit of background as to why Cinderella is so sticks around and is just okay with being a servant to these really horrible people. And it's, you know, and the rationale is that she made a promise to her mother and father. She made a promise to her mom before her mom died that it's always be kind and something. I've heard there's this saying in the film, but kind is the big takeaway. And then to her dad, like before her dad dies, you know, he's like take care of your stepsisters, take care of your stepmom. And so she's like honoring that commitment that she made, even though they're treating her like absolute trash. And so it was a really honorable thing. Like she's an excellent role model, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And speaking of stepmother and stepdaughters, Anastasia and Drizella, I looked up a little bit about stepmother tropes. This definitely isn't the first movie to kind of target the stepmother. I think not everyone has a horrible stepmother story, but I feel like, you know, it's a trope for a reason. So I found this interesting blurb in Psychology Today, and I'm just quoting them. Stepmothers are frequently singled out for very bad treatment, though they kind of spun it around like by stepchildren who pick up their mother's anger and resentment and become her proxy in their father's household. I thought that was such a weird thing, which is why I'm glad Cinderella didn't really hold a grudge against the stepmother. But historically, stepmothers were a very common occurrence back in that time era where the movie take place, because, you know, a lot of not because of divorce and remarriage, but more so mothers at the time would die a lot during childbirth. I know my thoughts are kind of going all over this place. So this would mean the new wife, or in this case the stepmother and her children, the stepdaughters, were in direct competition with the wife's first child, not just for love but also kind of money. I feel like there's a kind of a heavy theme about money and kind of that competition, so to speak.
It's interesting. One of the, again, talking about the live action version, one of my favorite parts of the film is at the very end when she's leaving the house with the prince. She looks at her stepmother and she goes, "I forgive you," and then walks out of the house. And like, there's just like, which is just such a badass moment. But like the relationship between Cinderella and the stepmother. First of all, I love the stepmother and the stepsisters in this movie. I love their voices. I love their animation. Like, they really are like unique individual people, and I love the way that they're drawn and how they look, and the way that the stepmother, like when you first meet her and she's in her room and her bed is like she's in shadow and you just see the cat, like everything about her. But it's like, I mean, you're exactly right. It's not, in the live action movie deals with this a lot more, but it's not so much about like, you know, being mean to Cinderella for being mean's sake. It's about like really what the stepmother is fighting for is a future for her daughters, because Cinderella's future is secured because she's got her father's inheritance, and now the stepmother's daughter's future is not, because they don't have a father. So I think that's interesting.
Corey, what are your thoughts on the lovely Anastasia and Drizella and stepmom?
Like, they're just, I almost feel like they are I mean, I know, I know. Our next episode is Alice in Wonderland, and we'll talk about them here. But they kind of feel like Tweedledee and Tweedledum a little bit. You know, they're just kind of like, yeah, they're really mean, especially when they rip her dress apart that the mice made. Like, yeah, they're really mean, but they're also like really clumsy and stupid, and you're meant to laugh at how dumb they are. Like when the music scene where the one is singing and the other one's playing the flute, and they're both really bad at what they're doing.
Oh man!
And like the one gets her finger stuck in the flute and she like can't get it out. Right? It's just, and then she hits the other one in the Adam's apple, which is like, oh well, why does she have an Adam's apple first of all? But like, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's really fun. They're really funny in a terrible way. And every time something terrible happens to them, it's funny.
Yeah, I agree.
So
good comedic relief, even though the underlying issue is kind of it's sad and unfortunate. But
even at the end when they're like trying to shove their feet into the slipper,
yes,
like the one kind of hides her heel under her dress and is like it fits, and then you just find out that her foot is really big and long, and then the other one's foot looks like it's going to snap in half when she tries to shove it in. It's kind of gross, actually, but
yeah. Well, not as gross as cutting your toes off.
This is true.
Yeah, the step. Oh, this is something I want to start, and I probably should have talked to you guys before this. Maybe we can do like an episode, like a spin-off episode on this. But I kind of want to rate villains. I have this strange fascination with villains. I don't know why, because the movie's supposed to be about the protagonist. But I love villains. I get very intrigued. A lot of times I'll judge a big influence on how I judge a movie is how well a villain is outlined.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, I don't know if you want to do like a rating scale from 1 to 10 or just make it non-numerical, but how would you kind of rate, because Disney villains I feel like are a big thing, the stepmother as a Disney villain, because I find her scary in the sense that she has this like very quiet, calm, cool, collected demeanor about her, but like you can see the cruelty in her eyes.
Mm-hmm.
She just like trips that guy and lets the glass slipper smash. So I would say like she's kind of pretty high up there on the sinister list for me.
Yeah, I feel about her the same way. Just track with me for a second. If you look at Harry Potter, obviously the main villain in Harry Potter is Voldemort, right? He's like evil incarnate.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's Professor Umbridge.
Yes,
who is like, to me, the more terrifying villain, because one, she's much more realistic.
Yes. Two,
she's just sinister. Like she's just like she's just there's like a real human quality to her that is so recognizable in people who I've interacted with in the past. And so I feel the same way for the stepmother. Like in terms of like, mustache twirling villain, like she's not like that at all. But like in terms of just evil to her core, like cruel, just bad person, like she's so realistic. And so like I know people or have known people who are like that. And so definitely, at least so far, and maybe for a long time to come, I don't know, Maleficent is pretty great too, but I think she's like the top of the Disney villains for me, because she is like...
So does Disney. I mean...
but she's like not... She's not like obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like you look at the guy with the no nose who looks like a snake, like, yeah, that's a bad guy. But like you look at Umbridge and you're like, oh, there's a cute old lady in a pink cardigan, right? And so it's like she's just deceptive. And so
yeah. I mean, it's I don't really have much to add. Mark just always puts things so eloquently. I feel kind of dumb going after him. So
I ramble. I'm not very elegant, but
I like the Harry Potter comparison, because Professor Umbridge scares me like 20-fold, like way more than Voldemort. I'm sorry.
I must not tell lies. Oh my God.
Well, you know what I think it is, and I think it's applicable to the stepmother is villains like that use rules and use structure that are agreed upon by like society, right, to their advantage. And so it's manipulative and it's crafty, and you can't really fight that. Like you can fight like pure evil, right? Like let's rally around that
because everyone, yeah,
that. Right. But like a detention or like that kind of the stepmother using Cinderella's kindness to force her into servitude, like that's an established societal thing, right? And so it's difficult to fight that because it's like on the surface it's like, nope, that tracks, right? So you can't like rally behind that. So I think that's so much more evil and sinister than just outright
being evil for evil's sake.
Being evil, yeah.
I agree.
Any other characters? I hate to say it, but the prince is like kind of a generic prince. Like he doesn't have much of a personality, so I really don't have much to say about him. No offense to Prince, whatever his name.
Charming.
Prince Charming.
Prince Charming.
Oh, Charming.
Again.
Yeah, he is the Prince Charming. Sorry, yeah.
It's always Prince Charming.
Because if not, we'll move to just overall general impressions about the film before we wrap up, whether it's favorite moments or moments we didn't like. I'll just kind of start off with the music really stood out for me. Like if A Dream Is What Your Heart Makes, Bippity Boppity Boo, the work song, like these are, I don't know, just the foundations of the most memorable Disney songs of our generation.
I have a fun fact before we move on. Cinderella's Prince Charming's name is Henry. It is not explicitly said in the film, but in a TV spot advertising the Blu-ray release for Cinderella in Europe, they specifically say his name is Henry.
Interesting. Wonder why they didn't bother giving him that name in the movie to give him more
because
of a...
he's not in it long enough to...
Yeah, seriously. I said this earlier, but I mean, my favorite part in the animated movie is when Cinderella transformed into her dress.
Mm-hmm.
The animation is beautiful. It's like a real, like, well, that part, and at the very end of the movie when the Duke is about to leave their house, and then she goes, "Your Grace," and then she comes down, and they break the slipper, and she's like, "Well, I have the pair right here," and it's like the music and the reaction of the stepmother, and it's just like so cathartic and just, I mean, really fantastic. So those are my two favorite parts.
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite part. I mean, I have a few. I actually really liked this movie a lot more. Like I said earlier, I really liked this movie a lot more than I anticipated this time around. Because like, when you put it on for your kid, you just kind of like half pay attention and you're kind of playing on your phone or on your laptop or doing something completely different, right? And so like actually sitting and watching it, I love the scene where Gus is picking up the corn. I think that scene is just hilarious. I know it's not like there's nothing revolutionary about the animation or anything. It's just funny. Or like when he's trying to string the corn on his tail, right? Or I think Jacques is actually doing it for him. But like, it's just a funny scene because he's like, they're obviously trying to play up that he's a chubby mouse and he's really hungry because he's a chubby mouse, and it's a fat joke and it's kind of funny. Okay, but it works, and like when he like tries to put his teeth, like how many times have you like carried something upstairs and you're like put your chin on the top to try to balance it, right? It's that, and it's hilarious because he messes up, and that's the one thing you don't want to do when you're carrying stuff like that.
Right.
I love that scene. I love the dress reveal, like after the mice make the dress, and like she comes upstairs, and obviously like the doors open and the birds fly, and like there's streamers and the dress is revealed, and she like, and
Gus says happy birthday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That part is cool, but also like all the transformation stuff is just exquisitely animated, and like I don't think there's anything better animated until you start getting into like the modern stuff,
Right.
No, agree. I've already said it before. I hate, anything with the King and the Duke is kind of now my new favorites. I will say, as I'm not generally a tomboy, but if I were to look at all the Disney princess dresses, I gotta say the Cinderella dress is probably like my top one. Like if I ever were to have like a dream day where I could try on a Disney princess dress, it would be between that and Belle. Maybe still, sure. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But I agree, Cinderella would be a close second.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not sure if I really had any moments I didn't like. I will agree with Corey that prior to this, maybe I didn't appreciate Cinderella enough. But now that I sat down with it, watched it with my son, paid attention to it, I actually have a renewed sense of respect and appreciation for this film.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, where do you think it's going to sit in our definitive ranking? Right now, we have Pinocchio sitting at number 1, Bambi at number 2, Snow White at number 3. Where's Dumbo? Must be...
Last.
Wait, that's not right. Okay, Dumbo is number 4. I don't know why I didn't put Dumbo. Sorry, Dumbo. I forgot about you.
We all trying to forget about Dumbo. The best thing to ever come out of Dumbo was that dumb ride at Disney World. So... And even then, it's not even that great. It's kind of disappointing when you get
Sorry, Dumbo.
It's fine.
We love you, but maybe not the movie. Anyway, so I don't know why, but I feel like this is such an easy answer for me. I feel like Cinderella has to be number 1.
Yeah,
so
I actually kind of feel the same way. I
agree.
This movie hit on all cylinders. It's funny. It's clever. You're rooting for her. Like, she's not just some damsel in distress. You're really rooting for her to, like, succeed in her dreams and what she wants to do, right? It's fun. I really love this movie. I'm actually quite shocked at this point. Because going into this review thing, I was like, okay, well, Pinocchio is probably going to be number 1. Pinocchio's fun. I can take or leave Bambi. I could take or leave Snow White, which I'm actually shocked at how much I like Snow White, actually. So going in, I'm glad we're rewatching these because it actually is changing how I feel about a lot of these movies.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, Cinderella is definitely number 1 for me, no question.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we have an easy decision, at least for now. It'll get more difficult the more Disney movies we look at. So
no, it won't. Just kidding, it will.
Any closing comments for Cinderella?
It's great. I don't have much else to say. It's there's so many great animated cues in this movie. I can't talk about the animation enough, and I know Mark's brought it up 100 times, and so have I. And it's just, man, I can't believe this whole movie was hand drawn in
50.
In the technically probably the 40s. It's God, this is so good, so good. Songs are good. Cinderella is so good. That song is so good. Man.
All around great movie.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And watch the live action version if you haven't.
Yes.
Yeah, it's also the best live action.
We endorse that.
Yes.
Here at Boss Rush. Excellent. Yes. Well, to close out, let's say our goodbyes. Mark, tell everyone where we can find you.
You can find me at Boss Rush, where I'm, writing movie reviews and TV show reviews, and
I'm only just the entertainment lead.
Well,
yeah,
it depends on the day. And you can find me on Twitter at Except in Pererra, and you can find me on the other standard def for where we're going through the MCU.
Nice. All right, boss man, Corey, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at IamCoreyNHD, and Instagram too, if you want to follow me there. You can also find me hosting the Boss Rush podcast. You can find me on Nintendo Pow Block. You can find me on MCU Standard Def and various other things. We're also doing if you're into video games, we're doing a ranking Nintendo consoles. We started that, so that's fun. And we just wrapped Indiana Jones, so you'll be able to hear all of those. The rankings may surprise you, especially our conversation on Crystal Skull.
I can't wait.
And you can find me on After Dark as well.
Awesome. And I am Stephanie. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Klimov, KLIMOV_author. Maybe not so much these days, but hopefully soon when I get back in the swing of things, you can find me on bossrush.net. I'm also on the Boss Rush podcast Wednesday nights and After Dark as well. So until then, have a great night, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Psych! But not really.
Ha!
But before we start with Alice in Wonderland, I have